Chapter 44, He's a Pinball Wizard. Disclaimer, man was not meant to live on donuts alone. That's why coffee was invented. He's a pinball wizard. May I have a moment of your time, Mr. Potter? McGonagall snagged Harry on his way to the Great Hall. What can I do for you, Professor? I was able to get your Quidditch ban lifted. Imagine my surprise when I was told that you did not intend to play this year. The old woman sighed. The last thing I wish to do is tell you how to live your life. I do not intend to force you to play, and I am not going to waste your time trying to convince you to change your mind. What I would like is for you to tell me why. All right, Professor, Harry agreed. Taking a deep breath, Harry took a moment to decide how to word his response. Can I have your word that this will stay between us? You may, McGonagall agreed. I promise not to reveal anything I learn from this conversation to anyone without your express permission. Can you see that tapestry at the end of the hall? Harry removed his glasses. Yes, what does that have to do with anything here? Harry handed the old woman his glasses and began reading the plaque above the tapestry. The four founders decided to build a school for magic. They decided that. Do I need to read any more, or do you get the picture? Your eyes have been repaired, Minerva said. The old woman handed Harry his glasses back. Not just repaired, Harry sighed. I got curious about Madam Hooch a few years ago. I wanted to know if she'd ever been in professional Quidditch, and you found out about her accident. Minerva closed her eyes. You read that it was determined that she could no longer play professional Quidditch because of her enhanced eyes. That is correct, Professor, Harry agreed. It would not be fair to take a spot on the team that could go to someone else. Would you still be willing to play on the reserve team? Minerva asked with a hopeful smile. If you need me, then I would be happy to play for the house team, Harry said after a moment of thought. But only if you need me. Thank you, Mr. Potter. I appreciate the fact that you are willing to help out. McGonagall turned to leave. Before I go, may I ask you one more question? You may, Professor. How did you fix your eyes? McGonagall asked. I would not have thought that you would do something that would destroy your Quidditch career. It was an accident, Professor, Harry admitted. I was surprised to learn that perfect eyesight was a side effect. I see, Minerva said, pausing to think. It is not my place to say, but I dare say that there is a book in the library with a green cover on the third shelf from the front. It is wearing the dust jacket of a book entitled The History of Socks, and it is hidden behind a book on gardening. I believe that if you were to take the time to read this book, that you will not suffer as many side effects. Good day, Mr. Potter. I assure you that I have no proof. Since I have no proof, I have no obligation to do anything about this situation. Thank you, Professor, a very confused Harry replied. After his talk with his head of house, Harry had planned to go to the Great Hall, but curiosity got the better of him and he changed course to go to the library. It took him 15 minutes of searching, but he found the book that McGonagall had told him about, The Illegal Guide to Becoming an Illegal Animagus. Harry read the title. I can see how this would be useful. I grab him, George yelled. That command caused his twin to grab their brother Percy as walked out of the Ministry building. Stun him, George commanded. Got him, Fred said with satisfaction. Good job, let's get out of here before someone notices. Good idea, Fred agreed. You have the portkey. Just touch this to Percy and we'll be back in our shop. George held out an old newspaper. The three brothers reappeared in the back of the joke shop, and within minutes, Percy was strapped to a chair. Shall we find out why he left the family before we check up on the Ministry? George asked. The Ministry is the only thing we need to know, Fred said, but I would like to know why he's decided to become a bigger prat than usual. Let's keep our hoods up for the interrogation, George suggested. He hasn't seen our faces and I'd rather he not know who did this to him. Right, George agreed. The two brothers pulled up their hoods and awakened their stunned brother. Who are you and where have you taken me? Percy demanded. 2 drops of Veritaserum, I think, George murmured. Get his mouth open. Percy struggled as one of the dark figures forced his mouth open so the other could administer the truth potion. Why did you leave your family? The dark figures demanded. I didn't, Percy moaned. Fred and George shared a look. Why did you abandon your parents and siblings to keep my family safe? Percy replied. How did abandoning them keep them safe? George demanded. I didn't abandon my family, Percy said dully. Why did you abandoning your parents and siblings? How did that keep your family safe? Fred was starting to get the hang of questioning someone under Veritaserum. Because they didn't bother the families of Ministry personnel if they stayed out of things, said Percy. A line of drool began to run out of the corner of the boy's mouth. If I stayed with my parents then my family would die. He isn't making any sense, Fred muttered. Do you have any idea what he's talking about? No, George said, but I think I have a way to find out. Enlighten me, Fred suggested. Who is your family? George demanded. Penny and the baby, Percy sobbed. Fred and George shared another look of shock. What baby? My baby? Percy's body shuddered as he fought the effects of the potion. How old is your baby? Fred licked his lips. This was not what he was expecting. Not born yet. Percy's jaw clenched. Where are they? George asked. Where are they? Percy, has the potion worn off? Fred bent down to examine his brother. It doesn't look like it's worn off. It should still be good for a few minutes. George agreed. Think we should give him another dose, should be safe. Fred mused. Mum'll want to know about her grandchild. Open his mouth, George said after a moment of thought. We'll find Penny and bring the both of them back to Mum. She'll be happy to have the brat back, Fred said cheerfully. And so will we. Too true, twin o' mine. George forced his wayward brother's mouth open and went pale. Bloody hell, we need to get him to a healer. What is it? George asked quickly. His mouth's filled with blood. I think he bit through his tongue, Fred said urgently. Call the doctor. Doctor, George called into his Zippo. We need you here now. We have a medical emergency. I'm on my way, the doctor's voice replied. What's the situation? We had our brother under Veritaserum and he bit through his tongue, George said quickly. Please hurry, I'm here, the doctor said as she appeared in the shop. Where's the problem? Right here. Fred was still holding his older brother. He bit through his tongue. I don't know why. What happened? The doctor cast a quick blood-clotting charm and began assessing the situation. I opened his mouth to give him more Veritaserum after he wouldn't answer a question and it was filled with blood, Fred said quickly. Both twins were distressed by the situation that they'd found themselves in. What question did he refuse to ask? The doctor cast a few diagnostic charms. We wanted to know where his family was, Fred answered. Percy began struggling the moment he heard Fred's answer. Damn, the doctor screamed. Stun him. Fred cast a quick stunner and looked a little lost. What happened? He obviously doesn't want to tell you about his family, the doctor replied dryly. Because of the Veritaserum, it'll be a few minutes before I can give him any healing potions. In the meantime, I want to see the transcripts of your interview. Right, Fred replied. George handed the doctor the paper. Both twins shot nervous looks at their older brother as the doctor read. I thought you two were supposed to be checking out the ministry, the doctor asked suddenly. We wanted to see why he was being such a prat, George said quietly. We didn't think this would happen, Fred added. I suggest that you both get out of this room, the doctor growled. I am not feeling very charitable towards the two of you at the moment and it might be best if you were out of my sight, but he's going to be okay, George persisted. We're not leaving until you tell us if he'll be okay, Fred agreed. He's our brother and we still care about him, no matter how big a prat he's been, George added. Especially now that we know why, Fred finished. He should be fine, the doctor said quickly. Now go. The twins beat a hasty retreat and the doctor waved her wand a few more times to awaken her patient. How do you feel? She asked in her professional voice. A bit sore, Percy said slowly. It is hard to talk. That's normal, the doctor said quickly. You nearly bit through your tongue and the muscles are still repairing themselves. Are there any sore spots? No, Percy said after a moment of checking. Who are you? I'm the doctor, she replied. I work for Mr. Black, thank God, Percy sagged in relief. I thought I was. I'm sorry about those two idiots, the doctor continued. They'll have to make their own apologies later. Why don't you tell me about your Penny? Why? Percy stiffened. Because I want you to use your tongue, the doctor replied. I am not going to ask her where she is. I've seen what you do when that happens and I have no desire to reattach any bits of your body twice in one day. Oh, Percy said. I'm sorry, I just don't want to lose them. It's okay, the doctor assured Percy, and I may have the solution to that problem as well. Harry was on his way to the hidden room that he'd been using as his sleeping quarters when he ran into his friend on patrol. Hello Ron, Harry greeted his friend. How are things? They are good, Ron said nervously. Things are quiet. Shouldn't you be in bed? Why don't you go back to the tower? You feeling alright, mate? Harry blinked at Ron's odd response. The other boy had never really taken his duties seriously. Yeah mate, Ron said quickly. I just don't want you to get into any trouble, so you'd better get back to the tower. You trying to get rid of me? Harry asked slowly. Why would you think that? Ron giggled nervously. Are you here? A girl's whispered voice asked from down the hall. Ron reddened. Could I have a bit of time alone? Harry, who is that? Harry began walking towards the voice. Hello Hannah. Hi Harry, the Hufflepuff girl replied nervously. What are you doing out at this time of night? Satisfying my curiosity, Harry said dryly. Have fun you two. Bye Harry, Ron said quietly. Let's just keep all this between the two of us, mate. It's none of my business, Harry agreed. Thanks Harry, Hannah called out to Harry's retreating back. Yeah, thanks mate, Ron agreed. Harry was just turning the corner to his sleeping quarters when he ran into another person out late at night. May I have a moment of your time, Mr. Potter? Professor Sprout was standing in Harry's path. Depends on what you want it for, Harry said slowly. May I ask how you knew that I'd be around here at this time of night? I had Hufflepuff House out looking for you, Sprout admitted. I needed to talk with you and I wanted to talk to you before the other professors got a chance to. Harry grinned. She said she saw you coming this way, Professor Sprout agreed. Harry, may I call you Harry? You may, Harry replied. I wanted to talk to you about your lesson, Sprout said nervously. You showed a very Hufflepuff attitude when you talked about dying for your friends. Dying for a friend is easy, Harry said in a whisper. Killing for a friend is a bit more difficult, especially when one grows up in the same society that we did. I wanted them to understand how serious things were. I understand that, Professor Sprout said quickly. I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you were willing to teach my students such a difficult lesson. Our house prizes loyalty. The first years get told stories about great acts of loyalty. They hear about how this wizard gave blood to his friend or how this witch died for hers. Until now, they haven't told so many stories about how people killed for their friends. You help them to understand the personal sacrifice needed to be able to do such an act. Thank you, Mr. Potter. On behalf of all Hufflepuffs, I thank you for this lesson to my house. I didn't expect that, Harry said slowly. I expected that the staff would not be happy with my little lesson. Thank you for understanding. Would you mind allowing a few more students into your club? Sprout asked quickly. I think that all of my house members could benefit from your instruction. I am afraid that I might get spread too thin if that happened, Harry said after a moment of thought. Would it be possible for the Hufflepuffs that are already members of the club to teach their housemates what they've learned? It will be possible, Sprout agreed. Would you mind allowing me to sit in on a few of your lessons? I am a professor and I think that it might help if I were able to help my students bring back your lessons. I am happy to help, Professor, Harry replied. And if you wish to sit in on my lessons, then you are welcome to come. Would you be willing to help students from the other houses? This is not the time for silly house rivalries. I shall help anyone that needs it, Sprout said firmly, regardless of what house they entered in their first year. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Harry. Sprout took a deep breath. Some of the other professors aren't as understanding as I am. I understand. Harry held up a hand. I expect that I'll be having a few more talks about my actions and I doubt that they will be half as pleasant as this one was. I'm glad you thought things through, Sprout said with undisguised relief. Good night, Harry. Good night, Professor. Percy, Penelope called out as her lover walked through the door. I was so worried when you didn't come home. I was too. Percy took the girl into his embrace. I thought I was going to be killed. What happened? Penny refused to let go. I was captured by two men, Percy replied. They gave me Veritaserum and asked me a bunch of questions about you and the baby. What did you tell them? Penny asked nervously. Just that you existed, Percy assured the girl. I managed to keep from telling them anything important. I'm not sure what happened after that, but I had a short talk with one of Mr. Black's people. She told me that they would be willing to take you someplace safe. I don't want to leave you, Penny said quietly. We've already left our families. All we have is each other. I don't want to leave you either, Percy said quickly. But I'm more afraid of losing you. I'm sure that we could work something out so that you'd be safe and we could be together. How are we going to do that? Penny rested her head on Percy's shoulder. They did offer me a job working as an administrator for Black Ink, Percy said as he rubbed his lover's swollen belly. I don't know what the pay would be, possibly lower than what I have now, but we'd be together. Accept it. Penny decided the matter. We don't need much and we'll be together and safe. I'll make the call tomorrow morning, Percy replied after a moment of thought. Maybe we can settle things with our parents after we're safe. Harry awoke early the next morning and quickly made his way to a less isolated part of the school, whistling cheerfully as he entered the Great Hall. Harry was happy to see that he had the entire place to himself. Sneezy is very sorry, sir, a strange house elf spoke up. We did not think anyone would be up this early and we haven't put breakfast out yet. That's okay, Harry was quick to reassure the small elf. Would it be possible to get something to eat now, or is it better to come back later? Sneezy will get you something now, so then could I have an egg and a couple pieces of bacon between 2 slices of toast? Harry asked after a moment of thought. Something I can eat quickly. Yes sir. Sneezy snapped her fingers and Harry's sandwich appeared on the table. Will that be all Sneezy can do for you, sir? Yes, thank you. Harry was finishing his breakfast as the first few people began to arrive, and he was almost out of the great hall when his head of house managed to intercept him. May I have a moment of your time, Mr. Potter? McGonagall asked quickly. What can I do for you, Professor? Harry replied. The headmaster would like to speak with you about your study group, McGonagall said evenly. And Professor Hamilton has expressed his worry that you aren't paying any attention in his classes. Oh, Harry raised an eyebrow. Yes, Minerva confirmed. He would also like to have a meeting with you. When am I supposed to do all this? Harry sighed. You are excused from classes today, McGonagall explained. The headmaster thought it prudent to allow you time to contemplate what gets discussed. How thoughtful of him, Harry said flatly. If you would be so good as to honor an old woman's request. McGonagall fixed Harry with a sharp look. Be good enough to come to my classroom after you've finished your meetings with the headmaster and the defense professor. If I am currently in class, please come in and attract my attention without making any noise so as not to disrupt the lesson. All right, Professor, Harry agreed. If you want me to. Thank you, Mr. Potter. Minerva dismissed her students with a fond smile. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to humor me on this. Harry made his way to the headmaster's office and frowned when he realized that he had forgotten to ask for the password. Let me see, he mused to himself. I seem to recall a spell for just this sort of situation. Oh yes, Expositus. Harry's spell caused the gargoyle to leap aside and he walked up the stairs to his meeting with Dumbledore. You asked to see me? Harry asked calmly. Yes, have a seat, Dumbledore replied. I wanted to speak with you about the meeting you conducted with your study group. What about it? Harry had no intention of making this easy. I am somewhat troubled at your demonstration, Dumbledore said with a frown. Was it necessary to make them believe that you had just killed several men? Death is a necessary part of war, Harry rebutted, and I wanted to make sure that they knew how serious things were. Yes, but was it necessary to teach them that now? Dumbledore asked quickly. Was it necessary to show children such horrible things? Yes, Harry replied firmly. Why? Dumbledore begged. Can you make an old man understand? All right. Harry took a moment to think. You did not end the reign of the last Dark Lord by hugging him, did you? It required some very dangerous spells. Do you dispute the fact that deadly spells are needed to resolve things in this instance? Dumbledore shook his head. I do not. So we've established that it is necessary to teach deadly spells. Harry nodded. Do you dispute the fact that deadly spells are deadly? That they should be used responsibly and with great care? No, I do not, and I am quite glad to hear that we share that opinion, Dumbledore replied with a sad half-smile. Good, Harry said, because now we get to the next part of my argument. Could you conjure up a block of wood? Of course, Dumbledore affirmed. The block appeared on the desk and Dumbledore regarded Harry with a look of expectation. It might be best if it were on the floor, Harry said as he moved the block. Now watch closely, Reducto. What was I supposed to see? Dumbledore asked with a look of puzzlement. One moment. Harry conjured a leather bag and placed it on the remains of the shattered block of wood. Now compare what you just saw to this, Reducto. The bag exploded into a bloody mess and Harry let out a blood-curdling scream to add to the effect. That was very interesting. Dumbledore cast several cleaning and repairing charms. But if you would be so good as to get to the point, which example gave you a better idea of what a Reducto can do to a person? Harry asked quietly. The second, Dumbledore replied. The old man was beginning to understand Harry's point. Now put yourself in the mindset of a young student. You've just learned this great new curse and you want to try it out. Harry began. Are you going to try it out on one of your friends? After seeing what it did to that bag, I wanted them to know both the seriousness of what I was going to teach them and the dangers. I do not want any accidents that can be traced back to what they learned from me. Forgive me, Harry. Dumbledore sank back into his chair. I had doubted you. I can now see how your example has made the school safer. I am ashamed to admit that I had not thought of how dangerous a first year can be if they are not made aware of the power at the command of a one flick. My example was worse than a bag exploding. You knew that the bag was dead, that it couldn't feel any pain. They had every reason to believe that those Death Eaters were real and they got a much stronger lesson, Harry said quickly. The boy took off his glasses and began to massage the bridge of his nose. It had the added advantage of introducing them to battle without any danger. With any luck they'll be less likely to freeze up if they are thrown into the actual thing. I see you have given me much to think about, Dumbledore said sadly. Perhaps it is best that we get on to the other things I had hoped to discuss. What other things? Sirius as will, Dumbledore replied. He left everything to you. Is there anything you would like to do with it at this time? I'd like the books. Harry nodded. Could you have them brought here? Everything else can be dealt with later. Are you sure? Harry, Dumbledore asked quietly. Some of those books are rated R. Better to know what I'm going up against, Harry countered. I suppose. The headmaster slid an envelope across the desk. Your OWL scores. Harry ripped open the envelope and spent a few seconds glancing over them. Better than I expected. Will that be all, Professor? Yes, thank you for your time, Harry. Anytime, Professor, Harry replied on his way out the door. Harry left the headmaster's office and made his way to his meeting with Professor Hamilton. Oh, Harry, the defense professor greeted Harry in the hall outside the defense classroom. Please come in. What did you want to meet with me about? Harry asked quickly, wanting to get things done with as soon as possible. I've noticed that you don't seem to be paying attention in class, Hamilton replied, and I was worried about that. Could you tell me why you don't seem to be interested? I already know most of what you're teaching at the moment, Harry answered, and it can get a bit tedious to hear what you already know. I do listen in when you have something I haven't heard yet. I see. To be honest, I was afraid that this might be the reason, Hamilton said slowly. You are an exceptionally gifted student according to your grades, and such students often have trouble focusing on things that are too easy for them. Do you have any solutions to this? Would it be alright if I were to do a bit of self-study in class? Harry offered. That way I can listen when you have something new and read ahead when you don't. I think that's an excellent solution, Hamilton agreed. If I may ask you one more thing before you go, what's that? Would it be possible to sit in on one of your defense study group meetings? Hamilton asked hopefully. I've been asked by a few old friends to give a report on your skills, and I would also like to see what you can do myself. I think that could be arranged, Harry agreed. Good day, Professor. Good day, Mr. Potter. Hamilton bid farewell to his most gifted student. Harry left the defense classroom and began walking to his last meeting. It's like they are playing Harry pinball, he complained under his breath. Every time I finish a meeting I get bounced to another. Harry was whistling Pinball Wizard when he reached the Transfiguration classroom. Remembering his professor's instructions, Harry quietly opened the door and slipped into the room. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Potter, McGonagall called out. If you would be so good as to come up here for a moment. Okay, Professor, Harry agreed. Harry walked to the front of the room and stood next to his head of house. Would you say that transfiguration is a useful branch of magic, Mr. Potter? Minerva raised an eyebrow. Dead useful, Harry agreed. Why don't you give us a few examples? Minerva suggested. Well, animagus transformations can be useful for spying and for other reasons. A metamorphmagus can also be used for spying, and I guess that there are more mundane reasons that it would be useful to be able to change your appearance, Harry finished. How about dueling? Minerva prompted. Oh yes, Harry said quickly. Transfiguration can be dead useful in a duel if you use it right. Takes a bit more thought than just flinging spells, but it can be really effective. Thank you, Mr. Potter, Minerva said smugly. I want 2 feet by the end of the week on possible uses of transfiguration in a duel, and you are not to cheat by asking Mr. Potter. Class dismissed. Minerva gave a satisfied smile as the students rushed out of the room. Thank you, Mr. Potter. I'd wager that your little presentation has done more to boost the popularity of my class than anything I've done in the last few years. What did you want to speak with me about, Professor? I wanted to give you a bit of perspective, Minerva replied. I would imagine that Albus attempted to fill your head with noble ideas of redemption and how good will always triumph in the end. He might have said something like that, Harry agreed. I want you to know that those are wonderful ideals to have, but that they might not be the best ideals to hold in dark times like this. McGonagall sighed. War is a terrible thing, Mr. Potter, and in my life I have seen 2-3 if you count this latest one. I would advise you to stay realistic and grounded while there is still the possibility of attack. If you must follow Albus's ideals, it might be best to wait until things have quieted. Albus is a good man, but he doesn't live in the same world that we do, Harry suggested. Yes, that's it exactly, Minerva agreed. I want you to understand that I am not trying to downplay Albus's ideals. They are quite noble and they are probably the best to hold in times of peace. The problem is that we are not in the time of peace. Thank you, Professor. Harry was touched that his head of house would take the time to tell him this. Was there anything else you wished to talk about? How did your meeting with the defense professor go? Minerva asked mildly. It went okay. He said that I could study other things when he's talking about something I already know. I imagine that it must be difficult to sit through such a basic class, especially given the way he's chosen to teach it. McGonagall took a deep breath. What you have to understand is that many students will pay more attention when they are given an example of someone that they admire who uses the things that are being taught. That is why I chose to have you give a few examples to my Transfiguration class. Those students will have realized how useful my class is because they have your example. It is the same in defense. Most of the students will show greater belief in the effectiveness of the spells and tactics because they were used by Mr. Black. And, well, I hope that people understand the last bits where I explained why defense has turned into the history of Mr. Black. The history of Mr. Black. Could someone tell me how Mr. Black has influenced the English language? Professor Hamilton asked quietly. Black Ops, one student called out. Operations so dangerous and secret that they might have been done by Mr. Black. Black projects, another student added, such as the nuclear boom. Things that were created by or for Mr. Black. Men in black, one of the Muggle-born students yelled. Secret agents that dress in black and conceal the existence of UFOs. That's crazy. Professor Hamilton frowned. And they work for Mr. Black. 20 points. Professor Hamilton agreed. If they work for Mr. Black then it must be true. A make by Hebe. Ron and Hermione watched as Harry spoke into a Zippo lighter. An undo wearing a strange collar fell from above, and proceeded to maul the Death Eaters before them. Should we start asking questions now? Hermione asked. No, Harry's perfectly fine, Ron replied. Can we question him now? Hermione asked, watching Harry walk out into a blizzard without a coat in order to fend off the attacking Yetis. Harry will be fine, Hermione, Ron replied, taking another sip of his hot chocolate. Hermione gulped, watching as Harry ignore the many bites inflicted upon him by Voldemort's werewolf troops, and cut them down with a small knife. Ron, don't you think we should? There is nothing wrong with Harry. I don't understand why you are so upset. Ron cut her off, staring at the pile of broken vampire bodies piled up next to him. He munched contentedly on Ice Mice, a make by Steve 2 in Chapter 24. Harry, not reluctantly one might add, went away with the Veilers. In short order, they escorted him back to a stately manner. Harry, started Gabriel's cousin, what will you be doing now? Several of the Veilers already thought they knew what he wanted and started removing extra clothes at her shoes first to start. Well, I am on vacation and I'm looking for a good time, Harry replied innocently, or as innocently as any teenager can be. Veilers number 2 and 3 winked at each other and started removing their socks as well. What kind of good time? Harry smiled nervously, unsure if he should take his shoes off as well. Well, it's something I've never done and I've always wanted to do it. Most of the remaining Veeler nodded to the others and all the remaining shoes came off, stacked neatly near the door. No sense getting the furniture dirty with shoe prints as they always say. What easy ET you want? Harry came the husky reply. I've always you'll think it's silly. That got their attention. What, Harry? We won't think it's silly. Lots of men say those things. As she said that, her shoes came off as well. Okay, Harry shrugged. Well, I've always wanted to play Monopoly. I've seen it played a couple times by my cousin, His Royal Larder Sayura. Excuse my French, he was speaking French. Asked Veeler number 4. Let me get this straight, Gabriel's cousin said, all the other Veeler watching on in interest as well. You are in a large manor, no parents around, with a dozen of age Veeler not wearing any shoes and you want to play Monopoly? Harry nodded. Or Clue. I wouldn't mind playing that either if you don't have Monopoly. I've never played it so I'm wondering what I am missing. A dozen smiles hit him at once. You want to play a game, a board game? Oh, Harry, we could kiss you but we won't because it is not in the rules, said Veeler number 2, putting the Monopoly game on a table where the young wizard and dozen Veeler proceeded to set up their pieces. Later, much later, stifling a yawn, Harry asked, when do we take a break? I'm getting tired. We've been at this for the past 13 hours. If you would meet defeat, you can go upstairs and go to bed, said Veeler number 3. Otherwise, you must continue playing. It says so in the rules. It does. You can't read French, can you? Said Veeler number 4. Well, you normally know, but you're then we. EET states that in the rules, relied Veeler number 4. Done. Well, how about some fire whiskey to get this game more lively? Harry was, after all, a little thirsty from playing such an active game. Who knew Monopoly had all these rules about landing on properties with hotels on them meant having to perform some sort of physical activity to get out of paying the fines? Vila number 2 smiled and said, okay. Rule number 435 states that if the person with the top hat piece asks for fire whiskey, then the liquor must be made available and a kiss on the cheek from every available Vila must be given. Sorry, Harry, but it's in the rules, Harry responded, after getting a dozen kisses on the cheek, and a few near misses that landed on his lips. Is there anything in there about trying butterbeer later, much later again? So what you're saying, Harry started, is that since we have a stalemate on Monopoly, we can bridge the impending financial crisis by running a sea battle to claim victory. We in the name of this game battleship, Harry, any way to tie in the names of the properties we don't want to the names of the ships so that when they go down, the properties free up and we can resume playing. Vila number 5 smiled and said, Harry has stumbled on the secret code of the day. Rule number 654, another round of kisses on the cheek, girls later, much later yet again. Well, girls, I can't tell you how much fun I've had these last few days playing Monopoly, Battleship, Clue, Risk, Candyland, and all the others. I wish I could stay here and play all summer, but these game rules are tough. I mean, I haven't slept in days. Thank God for pepper-up potions, but, Harry, you could have slept with us any time you wanted to. Vila's number 6 and 7 said in unison. They were twins, and very suggestively, thanks, girls, but we were all having such a good time playing. I didn't want to let any of you down, but now I have to get back to my vacation and get some rest. Thank you for inviting me to stay. I had a wonderful time. I'll treasure this forever. Sniff, to up the assembled Vila. What a nice boy. Say, I just noticed your overhead porch light is out. Do you want me to fix it? Oh, don't you worry about it, Harry. We will simply get the aging old gardener to fix it next time he comes by. It is only 15 meters off the ground. Oh, no trouble at all. You get a replacement bulb and I'll just get this rickety, old, wobbly ladder in place and see if we can't change the light bulb. 2 Frank says he falls by the time he gets to the 5th rung. Vila number 8 said to number 9, I think he'll get the job done and not fall until coming down the ladder. Can any of you girls hold the ladder please? It is a little unsteady, Harry said from the top of the ladder, already unscrewing the light bulb. Sorry, Harry, but we're not wearing any shoes, murmured the assembled Vila, rushing to now get their shoes on. Shoes were important, especially when going outside in the dirty outdoors. Alas, they were too slow in getting their shoes on.